Today we're going to work on creating stacked dot plots that can show the relationship between a quantitative variable like elasticity of billiard balls and a categorical variable like additive type. And so if we're looking at the form here, we can see that we've got a study where billiard balls were made in 10 batches. Each batch was divided into portions and so on. The additives are no additive, additive A, and additive B. And then we are looking at elasticity, which is measured on a scale from 0 to 100. Okay, so in Minitab, we want to go up under Graph, Dot Plot, and instead of doing a simple one, because we're doing something with groups, we've got two other options. We can do with groups, like this, where they are basically on top of each other, or we can do stacked groups. I'm going to tell you that the preferable way is to do it with groups, and I'll show you why afterwards. So we're dealing with one response variable and one group variable. Okay, so I'm going to select this one to start and say OK. So our graph variable is elasticity, so this is the quantitative variable. The categorical variable is additive. Okay. So that's the basic, quantitative, categorical. You've got a few choices here. So you've got your scales if you want to change X's and tick marks. I typically don't. You can go into labels and once again put your titles, but once again I think that's easier to do after the fact. On data view, I don't typically use it. Multiple graphs we are going to use. We want them in separate panels of the same graph? Yes. Do we want the same scales? Yes. Okay. And then for data options, we want to exclude any missing categories. There doesn't happen to be any, but it's good practice. And so we'll say OK. And so you see that we've got the elasticity for the different billiard balls for the different additives. Once again, you can label this right after the fact, going to the label statement and specify them, just like we've been doing with some of our other graphs. So none, A, and B. Okay. And then of course we would put this with a unit. Okay. And a better title, right? So this is elasticity of billiard balls by additive type. Okay. And there's your graph. You can send that, right mouse click, send it to Word. Okay. So this would show that you could see that for additive A that the elasticity values, and we're desiring higher elasticity, are certainly shifted to the right. And additive B shifts them to the left, and none is kind of in the middle, bridging both of them. So you can kind of see a relationship going on because the dot pattern is not the same across all three groups. Okay? So this would be the preferable graph. I told you there was another choice though, so if we go to dot plot and do stack groups, let me show you the difference. The dialog box looks exactly the same. So I'm going to put the quantitative variable under graph, the categorical variable under category. Once again, if you want to play with any of these type of things, you can. And I will say OK. And you see what they do is put it on one graph with the symbols kind of lapped on top of each other. So it's a little bit tough, other than you can see that the red squares are kind of up at the top. The blue dots you can kind of see here at the bottom, and the green triangles, but it's not the easiest to read. And so for that reason, this other graph is preferable. Okay, so once again, let me just kind of update and review here. This is the preferable one with groups. This is where the quantitative variable goes. This is where the categorical variable goes. Under data options, under group, you deselect these so that missing data does not show up as a group. You can specify labels after you've got the graph if you like, in terms of edit scale. And you get a graph like this. And of course I told you that the unstacked graph would look like this. Okay? So that is how to create a dot plot when you're trying to show the relationship between categorical and quantitative variables.